Dani Hoots is a young adult science fiction and fantasy author and likes to be inspired by ancient tales. She enjoys reading about history, astronomy, and plants, and in her spare time, she's watching anime, reading manga, or drawing. Take it away, Dani.
Hi, thank you for having me. I also wanted to note I have a autoimmune disorder, so it affects my dryness in my mouth. So if I cough a little bit, I'm sorry. I'll be reading the scene from my first chapter, and it's in the point of view of Ellie, who is a 19-year-old bounty hunter. So, begin. It didn't used to be this way. I tapped my smoke on the ashtray, exhaling the herb-filled vapor. It was a delightful blend of local plants and made to order at the bar. This establishment seemed to have it all. Smokes, drinks, both alcoholic and not. Games, food, gambling, it was all here. Meaning everyone in town occupied this small bar at all hours of the day. Thank goodness all I could smell was my herbal smoke and the alcohol in my friend Zach's breath. I had a feeling the room smelt of sweat and wet fur. How many girly martinis are you going to drink tonight? I raised an eyebrow and flashed him a grin. Zach stared at me, his shimmering gold eyes unamused as he downed the rest of the fruity martini through his tiny straw. Why he always used them instead of drinking on the side of the glass, I did not understand. Perhaps it was so he'd feel he was pacing himself, even if we both knew that was a lie. Setting the glass down, Zach pulled loose strands of red hair back into his butt. I'll have you know, these drinks taste a lot better than the straight alcohol you always have. I sighed. It's not straight alcohol, it's called whiskey. Tastes nasty is what it is. I smiled a little. Anyway, I should cut you off there. That's your third one and our contact isn't even here yet. There isn't much alcohol in these, at least I taste none. Yeah, I've noticed you don't, but that doesn't mean there isn't any in it. We've gone over this. You're a year older than me and should know better. He let out a breath of defeat. Oh yeah, a whole whopping year. Like age matters between 19 and 20. But fine, I won't have another until the guy gets here. What's he look like again? He's a human, and honestly, I'm not sure we can trust him. But he's the only lead we've got so far. Glancing out the crowded area, I noted all the beings that were having a good time. On the planet, there are a total of 5 different races, 6 if one counted the Pleiadians. There were the Lyrians, who appeared as a mix of human and wild cat. I spotted at least a dozen different groups that had Lyrians, and our bartender was one as well. That made sense since we were in the Lyrian zone. Then there were the Syrians. There weren't too many of those here, merfolk who could change between fish-like and human in a matter of seconds. Typically, the Lyrians and Syrians didn't get along, just like cats and fish, but don't say that to their face. They don't appreciate it. Then there are the Silurians, who were lizard-like and cold-blooded, both physically and emotionally. There were a few here as well, and I did my best not to make eye contact with any of them. Then, of course, there were humans, which was what my kind appeared like as well, at least for the most part. I glanced around and found quite a few, as humans like to travel and settle among the different zones, and they create half species or half humans. Typical humans not sticking with their own kind. I sighed as I glanced around some more, seeing if I could spot my own race, as if that were going to happen. This was the new norm, I suppose. There weren't many of us Calcians left, shapeshifters who almost all had been destroyed in the attack 3 years ago. The other races didn't like us, as we could turn into any species we wanted. The only way to tell we were Calcian was with our shimmering gold eyes. Each zone had propaganda against our race, making it illegal for us to shift, and eventually we were attacked. The problem was, our zone was heavily armored and shielded. Someone had to have been given them the codes and told them how to get in. I fiddled with the wooden ring that hung around my neck. And that person was my ex, Cornelius Adams. Zach brought me back to the present. Not too many humans in these parts, though, so he might know something. Surprised he didn't want to meet us in the quarter. I nodded and was about to agree when I heard a crackly voice next to me. Well, well, what do we have here? I turned to find 3 Silurian men. They wore dark, scaly leather made of the large lizard creatures they called dracons that they used for either meat, clothing, or rode instead of horses. Horses didn't hold up their weight. Only the Silurians could tame them, which I had a feeling had to do with the fact that they appeared similar. The larger of the 3 Silurians was the one who talked. He was more than likely their leader, since they always went by who was the largest. His eyes were almost at the side of his head like a snake I wanted to shoot before it bit me. But in this crowd, I couldn't do that. I gripped my gun, but kept it in my holster. We aren't doing anything wrong, just enjoying some drinks. Go make trouble elsewhere. I turned and tried to ignore them. One Cillian grabbed my shoulder and turned me back around. I wonder if there would be a day where I could go to the bar without being harassed. That prospect was looking bleak. Don't you dare ignore me, you calcium scum. His tongue slithered in his mouth, leaving me disgusted. There was nothing pretty about Silurians. Why couldn't I ever get yelled at by something handsome? Zach stood up. Hey, leave her alone. Oh, don't worry. I wasn't going to forget about you. He nodded to the other 2 to go stand near Zach. Glanced around, I noticed that most eyes were on us now, and it didn't look like anyone was going to help. Typical. No one wanted to get involved if there were Silurians. We have a client waiting for us, so unless you have business, meaning you will pay for our bounty hunting services, I flashed my gun. There isn't, then it's best you leave us alone. Are you threatening me? I'm only marrying whatever your 10 is, kind sir. The Silurian hissed, glancing around me as if looking for some kind of weakness. If he ever ran into the few Calcians that were left, my gut told me that they usually backed down or groveled at his feet by now. I, however, was not one to grovel. Could see his long, clawed hands reaching for his belt, more than likely where he stored a weapon. Without a second thought, I pulled out my gun and shot him straight in the chest. I heard his 2 friends let out a screeching hiss. Pivoting, I shot the other 2, and then all hell broke loose. So that is a section of my first chapter, and I'll be giving away a arc, as this book isn't going to be out till November for whoever wins the contest. So